The massive crystal structure of Vithara Prime sparkled like a jewel against the darkness of space. Two bright suns cast their light through the transparent walls, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the polished floors. Inside the great council chamber, beings from across the galaxy had gathered for their most important meeting in 1,000 years. High Counselor Vexthara stood at the center of the circular room, his dark armor gleaming under the crystal lights. Around him sat representatives from 12 different worlds, each more alien than the last. Some floated in special tanks filled with water, others existed as pure energy contained in glowing spheres, and a few looked like living rocks that pulsed with inner light. The meeting had been called to discuss one simple question: where should they expand next? For centuries, these 12 civilizations had ruled the galaxy together. They had conquered worlds, enslaved entire species, and built an empire that stretched across millions of star systems. But now, they wanted more. Senior Scanner Kethnis rose from his energy sphere, his form flickering like a flame in the wind. As the chief explorer for the Zephyrian Collective, he had spent decades mapping the outer edges of the galaxy, searching for new worlds to claim. "My lords and ladies," he began, his voice echoing strangely as it came from pure energy rather than flesh. "Our long-range probes have completed their survey of the outer spiral arm. The results are exactly what we expected. A three-dimensional map appeared in the air above the council chamber. Thousands of star systems glowed like tiny lights, each one marked with symbols showing whether it contained life, resources, or strategic value. Most of the outer systems glowed green, meaning they were empty and ready for colonization. Councillor Merdana shifted in her water tank, her blue skin rippling with curiosity. She came from an ocean world where her people had evolved from creatures similar to Earth's dolphins, though far more intelligent. What about the systems near the galactic edge? Surely some of them must contain intelligent life. Kethnis waved a tendril of energy dismissively. "Almost nothing of interest, my lady. A few primitive worlds with basic life forms, but no real civilizations. No space travel, no quantum technology, no threat to our expansion." The map zoomed in on a small section of the outer rim. One tiny yellow star blinked quietly in the corner, surrounded by several small planets. The third planet from the star glowed with a faint blue light, indicating the presence of water and atmosphere. "This system here," Merdana pointed with a webbed finger. "The third planet shows signs of life. What did your probes discover?" Kethnis barely glanced at the display. "Sol 3, as our databases call it. Yes, there are life signs, but nothing worth our attention. Basic carbon-based creatures, probably still climbing out of their oceans. No cities visible from orbit, no energy signatures, no spacecraft. The system would be perfect for strip mining operations." The other council members nodded in agreement. General Mordak of the Drakmor military leaned back in his metal chair, his scarred face showing amusement. Primitive creatures always make the best slaves, assuming they survive the mining operations. High Counselor Vexithara made a note on his datapad. "Very well. We'll mark the Sol system for resource extraction. Begin preparation for mining fleets to move into the outer territories within the next solar cycle." But while the Galactic Council dismissed Earth as worthless, something very different was happening in that supposedly empty system. Far from the prying senses of alien scouts, hidden in the shadow of Jupiter's massive bulk, humanity was preparing the greatest surprise in galactic history. Captain Li Dong-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike, watching through reinforced windows as robotic workers put the finishing touches on the largest fleet ever built. 200 ships floated in perfect formation around Jupiter's moons, each one a masterpiece of human engineering. The vessels were enormous, stretching over 2 kilometers from nose to tail, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. "Captain," called Navigation Officer Kim Min-ho from his station, "final systems check is complete. All ships report quantum tunnel drives operating at maximum efficiency. We're ready for deep space operations." Lee nodded slowly, his weathered face serious. Through the viewport, he could see Earth rising over Europa's icy horizon, a beautiful blue marble that had been humanity's home for millions of years. Soon it would be time to show the galaxy that Earth was far from defenseless. For over a century, humanity had been listening to alien communications, learning their languages, studying their technology, and preparing for this moment. The Galactic Council thought they were alone at the top of the cosmic food chain. They had no idea that humanity had been watching them, learning from them, and building weapons specifically designed to defeat them. The irony was perfect. While the Council's scouts had dismissed Earth as primitive and worthless, human engineers had been perfecting quantum tunnel technology that surpassed anything in the galaxy. While alien generals planned their next conquests, human admirals had been training for the war that was coming. Soon the galaxy would learn that humanity was anything but primitive. The Council had made the fatal mistake of underestimating their newest neighbors. 3 months had passed since the Galactic Council decided to strip mine the Sol system. The giant mining ship, Ore Seeker, drifted silently through space, its crystal hull catching starlight like a jewel. Chief Engineer Crystal stood in the command center, his body made entirely of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. The journey from the inner galaxy had taken weeks, but now they were finally here. The Sol system looked exactly as the Council's reports had described, a small yellow star surrounded by ordinary planets, with no signs of intelligent life anywhere. Beginning deployment sequence, announced Scanner Drone Beta 7, its mechanical voice echoing through the ship's crystal chambers. 12 harvester units launching toward asteroid belt. No defensive systems detected. Crystal watched through the ship's sensors as his automated mining machines spread out across the asteroid belt like hungry metal insects. Each harvester was the size of a small moon, equipped with powerful lasers that could slice through solid rock and massive cargo holds that could swallow entire asteroids whole. The operation began exactly as planned. The harvesters moved from asteroid to asteroid, breaking them apart and sorting the valuable metals from the worthless rock. Tons of precious materials flowed into the storage bays every hour. At this rate, they would strip the entire belt clean within a few months. Excellent progress, Crystal transmitted to his crew. Energy readings are stable across all units. Continue extraction operations. But then something went wrong. Scanner Drone Beta 7 suddenly began flashing warning lights across its metal body. Alert! Alert! Detecting massive energy disturbances from inner system. Unknown quantum signatures detected. Crystal's crystal form blazed brighter with confusion. Quantum signatures meant only one thing: faster than light technology, but that was impossible. The Council's scouts had confirmed this system contained no intelligent life, certainly nothing capable of building quantum drives. Focus all sensors on the energy source, he ordered. Maximum resolution scan. The drone's instruments turned toward the giant planet Jupiter, and what they found made Crystal's crystalline structure dim with shock. Dozens of enormous ships moved in formation around the gas giant's moons. These weren't primitive vessels. They were warships, each one larger than anything in the Crystallis fleet. The ships had a brutal, angular design that spoke of military purpose. Their dark hulls bristled with weapon ports and armor plating. Even from this distance, Crystal could see that each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, making them larger than most Drakmor battlecruisers. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice creating musical chimes in the crystal chambers. "The report said this system was empty. These creatures are supposed to be primitive." But the evidence was undeniable. The energy readings showed advanced quantum tunnel drives, force field generators, and weapon systems that registered as more powerful than anything the Council had in their databases. Whoever built these ships had technology that rivaled the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Begin. Immediate withdrawal, Crystal ordered. Recall all harvester units. We need to report this to the Council immediately. As the Ore Seeker began pulling back its mining equipment, Crystal noticed something that made his crystal heart freeze with fear. Sleek ships were following them. These weren't the massive warships from Jupiter. These were smaller, faster, vessels that had somehow appeared without being detected. The pursuing ships were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with impossible grace, their smooth hulls reflecting no light at all. Worse still, they seemed to be scanning the Crystallis vessel with sensors that penetrated their stealth fields as if they didn't exist. "How are they tracking us?" demanded Beta 7. Our stealth technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. No primitive species should be able to detect us. But there was no denying what was happening. The human ships, for they had to be human, since this was their system, were following every move the Crystallis fleet made. They stayed just out of weapon range, but close enough to make it clear they were being watched and tracked. Crystal realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just detecting them, they were studying them. These supposedly primitive creatures were learning about Crystallis technology, ship design and capabilities. They were gathering intelligence like experienced military scouts. "Emergency transmission to Vithara Prime," Crystal ordered, his voice crackling with panic. "Priority Alpha. The Sol system is not empty. Repeat, Sol is not empty. Massive fleet detected. Advanced technology confirmed. Request immediate military support." The message raced through hyperspace toward the council chambers, carrying news. That would shatter everything the galaxy's rulers believed about the Outer Rim. The primitive world they had dismissed as worthless was home to a civilization with ships that dwarfed their own and technology they couldn't understand. As the Ore-Seeker fled toward the edge of the system, Crystal watched the human scouts continue their surveillance. They made no attempt to attack or communicate, but their message was clear. The Sol system was protected, and humanity was watching. The mining operation had been a complete disaster, but it had revealed something far more important. The galaxy was about to discover that they were no longer alone at the top of the technological ladder. 18 days after the mining disaster, the emergency message from Chief Engineer Crystal finally reached the crystal towers of Vithara Prime. The signal burst through the Council's communication network like a lightning bolt, its priority codes demanding immediate attention from every member of the ruling body. High Councillor Vexithara was reviewing routine trade reports when the alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the Crystal Palace. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red as he rushed toward the main council chamber, his heavy armor clanking with each step. The other council members were already arriving when he burst through the massive doors. Councillor Merdana's water tank was being wheeled in by robotic servants, while the energy beings of the Zephyrian Collective flickered anxiously in their containment spheres. Even the normally calm representatives of the Axiom Collective looked disturbed, their biomechanical faces showing expressions of concern. "What is the nature of this emergency?" Vexithara demanded as he took his place at the central podium. Senior, Scanner Kethnis materialized in the center of the chamber, his energy form crackling with agitation. "My lord, we have received a priority transmission from the Crystallis mining operation in the Sol system. The contents are disturbing." The holographic display activated, showing the raw data from Crystal's sensors. Ship silhouettes appeared. In the air above the council chamber, massive vessels with angular designs and weapon systems that made even the hardened military representatives gasp in surprise. General Mordak of the Drakmor Third Conquest Fleet leaned forward in his chair, his scarred face twisted with disbelief. "This cannot be accurate," he growled, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "Primitive creatures cannot develop quantum tunnel technology. Our own scientists have spent centuries trying to perfect such systems, but the evidence was undeniable. The scanner readings showed energy signatures that matched the most advanced ships in the Galactic Fleet. The vessels were enormous, each one larger than a Drakmor battlecruiser, and they moved with precision that spoke of experienced crews and superior technology. Prime Calculator of the Axiom Collective processed the data through its quantum computer, Brain. The biomechanical being's eyes glowed brighter as it ran calculations that would take organic minds hours to complete. Mathematical analysis indicates a 97.3% probability that these readings are accurate, it announced in its mechanical voice. The vessels detected employ technology comparable to our most advanced designs. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 12 different species began shouting in their various languages, creating a cacophony of clicks, whistles, growls and electronic sounds that echoed off the crystal dome overhead. Vexithara slammed his armored fist against the podium, the sound booming like thunder. "Silence," he roared. "We will discuss this rationally." But rational discussion seemed impossible, For 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled through superior technology and overwhelming military force. They had conquered hundreds of worlds because no other species could match their quantum drives, energy weapons, and defensive systems. The idea that some primitive creatures from the Outer Rim had somehow developed comparable technology was almost unthinkable. Councillor Merdana's aquatic voice rippled through her tank speakers. Perhaps there has been some mistake. Could these vessels belong to another council species? Perhaps someone established a secret base in that system. General Mordak checked his military databases, his fingers flying over holographic controls. Negative. All council fleets are accounted for. These ships match no known design in our records. The implications were staggering. If the humans, for they had to be humans since this was their home system, had developed such advanced technology, they represented a potential threat to everything the Council had built. They were an unknown variable in a galaxy that the Council thought they completely controlled. Vexithara's military instincts took over. As a veteran of dozens of conquest campaigns, he knew that unknown threats had to be eliminated quickly before they could grow stronger. If these creatures have developed spacefaring military capability, they represent a danger to galactic stability, he declared. I propose immediate military intervention to assess their capabilities and establish council authority over their system. The vote was swift and unanimous. Every species agreed that the human threat had to be contained before it could spread. Within hours, the largest military fleet in galactic history began assembling in the outer sectors. 50 Drachmor battleships formed the core of the armada, their dark hulls bristling with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. 30 Merhadan, biomechanical leviathans, joined them, living ships that could repair themselves and adapt to enemy tactics. 20 Axiom collective reality warpers added their space-bending technology to the mix, while support vessels from 9 other species brought the total to over 300 ships. But as the Great Armada prepared for the hyperspace jump to Sol, new intelligence reports began arriving from other star systems. Human vessels had been spotted near Proxima Centauri, conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance missions. Similar ships had been detected near Barnard's Star and Wolf 359, always staying just beyond sensor range but clearly observing Council activities. The horrible truth began to dawn on the assembled military commanders. The humans hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had been using it to spy on the galaxy's ruling powers for months, possibly years. While the Council had dismissed them as primitive, the humans had been studying their enemies and preparing for war. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had been playing a very different game all along. The greatest fleet in galactic history tore through the fabric of space as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships from 12 different worlds materialized in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready for battle. High Councillor Vexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see a few primitive vessels cowering near the third planet. Instead, he found himself staring into the face of the most sophisticated military trap ever constructed. Admiral Park Ji-hoon had spent months preparing for this moment. His 200 dreadnoughts were arranged in a 3-dimensional web that stretched across the entire solar system. Each ship was positioned to provide covering fire for its neighbors, while maintaining clear escape routes among the outer planets. The formation was a masterpiece of military engineering that would have impressed even the Council's greatest tacticians. The human ships themselves were nothing like the Council had expected. Instead of crude metal boxes held together with primitive technology, they saw sleek vessels with angular designs that seemed to cut through space itself. Dark armor plating covered hulls that bristled with weapon systems the aliens couldn't identify. Each ship was over 2 kilometers long, making them larger than anything except the Council's most massive battleships. High Councillor Vexithara activated his communication systems, broadcasting on every frequency known to galactic civilization. His voice boomed across space with the authority of someone who had conquered 100 worlds. "Primitive species of the third planet," he announced, "you will surrender immediately and submit to Galactic Council authority. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your homeworld and the enslavement of your entire species." The response came back instantly, and it shocked every alien on every ship in the Council fleet. The human voice spoke in perfect translations of every council language: Drakmor military standard, Crystallis harmonic frequencies, Merhadan aquatic speech patterns, and 8 others. The translations were so accurate that each species could hear subtle emotional undertones in their own native tongue. "This is Admiral Park Ji-hoon of the United Earth Space Command." The voice carried the calm confidence of someone who held all the advantages. "You have entered sovereign human territory without permission and made threats against our homeworld. You have exactly 60 seconds to reverse course and leave our system, or we will consider your presence an act of war." General Mordak burst into laughter on his battleship bridge. "Did you hear that? These primitives think they can threaten us. They probably built those ships out of scrap metal and are hoping we'll be scared by their big words." He opened his own communication channel. "Little humans, do you have any idea who you're talking to? We have conquered more worlds than your species has fingers. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that can stop stars. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live as slaves." Admiral Park's response was immediate and terrifying. "Your 60 seconds are up. All units execute Protocol 7. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come." The space around the Council fleet suddenly erupted in synchronized explosions as hundreds of quantum tunnel mines detonated at precisely the same moment. The mines had been placed weeks earlier by human stealth ships that had moved through the system like ghosts. Each explosive device contained a small amount of exotic matter that, when detonated, created tears in the fabric of space-time itself. The explosions didn't just damage the alien ships, they warped reality around them. 40% of the Council fleet was crippled in the first 3 seconds of combat. Mighty Drakmor battleships found their hulls twisted into impossible shapes as space-time bent around them. Merhadan bioships writhed in agony as the quantum explosions interfered with their living tissue. Even the advanced Axiom Collective vessels couldn't adapt quickly enough to counter weapons that attacked the very structure of reality. Before the surviving alien ships could raise their defensive shields, the human dreadnoughts surged forward like a pack of hunting wolves. Their weapons systems unleashed hell in the form of relativistic projectiles, chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed that hit with the force of nuclear bombs. But the real terror came from the antimatter beams. Streams of pure destruction lanced out from the human ships, slicing through alien armor plating as if it were made of paper. Vessels that had survived battles against entire planetary defense systems found themselves cut in half by weapons they had never imagined. The Crystallis ships tried to use their advanced shielding technology, but the human weapons seemed designed specifically to penetrate their defenses. The Drakmor fleet attempted to charge forward in their traditional battle formation, only to find their paths blocked by more quantum mines that appeared from nowhere. General Mordak watched in horror as his flagship's sensors registered impossible energy readings from the human vessels. These weren't primitive weapons thrown together by savage creatures. They were sophisticated systems that had been designed by minds that understood warfare better than the Council's greatest military theorists. "Impossible," he whispered, as another of his battleships exploded in a ball of antimatter fire. "They're just primitives. They're supposed to be afraid of us." But fear was the last thing Admiral Park's fleet was showing. The human ships moved with deadly precision, each one supporting its neighbors, while systematically dismantling the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. The Council's age of dominance was ending, and it was ending in the most spectacular military defeat in galactic history. The Battle of Sol lasted exactly 19 minutes from first shot to final surrender. When the quantum explosions finally stopped lighting up the darkness of space, the sight that greeted the survivors was beyond their worst nightmares. 2/3 of the mighty Council armada drifted as twisted wreckage among the asteroids, their hulls torn apart by weapons they had never imagined possible. The remaining alien ships found themselves completely surrounded. Human vessels seemed to materialize from empty space, appearing from stealth positions they had held throughout the solar system. The survivors realized with growing horror that they had been watched and tracked from the moment they arrived. High Counselor Vexithara sat in his command chair like a broken statue, staring at the tactical display that showed his fleet's total destruction. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were now nothing but floating debris. The pride of galactic civilization had been crushed by creatures they had dismissed as primitive savages. A communication signal came through from the human fleet. "This is Admiral Park Ji-hoon. High Counselor Vexithara, you will prepare to receive a boarding party. Any attempt at resistance will result in the destruction of your remaining vessels." 30 minutes later, Admiral Park walked through the corridors of the Dra'kari flagship, flanked by human marines in advanced combat armor. The alien crew members they passed pressed themselves against the walls, too shocked and frightened to do anything but stare at the beings who had just shattered their understanding of the galaxy. Park found Vexithara in his private chamber, sitting alone and staring out at the wreckage of his fleet. The alien leader looked up as the human admiral entered, his eyes filled with confusion and defeat. "I don't understand," Vexithara said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How is this possible? Our scouts said you were primitive. No space travel, no advanced technology, no threat to anyone." Park pulled up a chair and sat across from the defeated counselor. "That's exactly what we wanted your scouts to see," he explained calmly. "We've been listening to your communications for over a century. We learned your languages, studied your technologies, mapped your territories and trade routes. We knew everything about you while you knew nothing about us." The alien's face showed complete bewilderment. "But how? Our sensor technology is the most advanced in the galaxy." "You dismissed us as primitive because we made sure you would," Park continued. "We hid our cities underground, kept our ships in the outer system where your probes wouldn't look, and made our planet appear exactly as backward as you expected it to be. In military strategy, that's called deception." Vexithara slumped deeper into his chair. "You planned this, all of it. You knew we would come." "We've been preparing for this day since we first intercepted your transmissions," Park confirmed. "We studied every species in your council, learned how you fight, what weapons you use, what your weaknesses are. Then we built our fleet specifically to counter your advantages. The news of humanity's impossible victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On worlds that had been conquered and enslaved by the Council, beings gathered in secret to whisper about the upstart species that had defeated their oppressors. Some saw hope for the first time in generations. Others prepared for the chaos that would surely follow the collapse of galactic order. Within days, rebellions broke out on a dozen Council worlds, species that had been forced to serve as slaves, and laborers suddenly found the courage to fight back, inspired by humanity's example. The carefully maintained balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for centuries began to crumble. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the crystal halls of Vithara Prime hosted a very different kind of gathering. The Galactic Council had been reformed, but this time the meeting included representatives from species that had never been allowed to speak before. Ambassador Yoon Soo-jin walked to the central podium that had once been reserved only for the ruling council members. She was a small woman compared to the massive aliens around her, but her presence filled the entire chamber. Behind her, holographic displays showed the remarkable changes that had swept across the galaxy in just half a year. Human colonies now existed on 15 different worlds, established not through conquest, but through trade agreements with willing partners. Former council slave worlds had declared independence and were forming their own governments. The rigid hierarchy that had controlled galactic civilization for millennia was being replaced by something entirely new. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Yoon began, her words translated into dozens of languages. "Humanity does not seek to replace the old council with human rule. We seek to transform it into something better." She gestured to the diverse crowd of representatives. "The era of governance through fear and intimidation ends today. The age of cooperation and mutual respect begins now." Through the crystal domes, overhead, human dreadnoughts maintained protective formations around Vithara Prime. But these ships weren't there as conquerors or occupiers. They served as guardians of a new galactic order, one where strength protected the weak instead of enslaving them. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had not just won a military victory. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall when it underestimated those it considered beneath notice. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had begun, and it would reshape civilization among the stars for generations to come.